Hi class, today we're going to be talking about color transparency or the illusion of making color transparency. Now in this fifth or sixth project, basically I'm going to have you create a simple composition with at least 5 shapes that illustrate the properties of color transparency. But you first have to remember just the fundamentals of color itself. So first of all, you have color in terms of hue, or actually the color name. And in this case, I've got an example of yellows. So this is an example of a really bright, saturated yellow, because saturation is actually one of the other aspects of color, how bright it is and how pure it is. On these two examples right here, you can actually see a sort of shift in terms of saturation or brightness of the color, and also value to a certain extent. This is a little bit grayer and maybe quite a bit lighter. And this other yellow right here is even more gray. Here's a really good example of just adding white to a color, which gives you the idea of value in this case, which also sort of affects saturation in the case of this yellow. So whenever you're using color, just remember those 3 characteristics: hue, which is the color name, saturation, or actually a pureness of color, and also value, which is the lightness or darkness of color. And so those are the 3 things you have to keep in mind. And while you're doing this exercise, it's really important to have that in the back of your mind, because you're going to be trying to create transparencies, or the illusion with transparency, by using opaque color. So in this first example I'm going to work with, I'm going to use color to create the illusion of transparency with primarily value in this case. So I've got a number of greens that I just started with, and you'll notice with the greens themselves, there's a couple of characteristics. These have a little more yellow in them. All of them have yellow. Some of them are a little bit less saturated than the others. You can see on this side, there's a little bit more gray in them. I want you to create 5 examples for your sketchbook or your thumbnails to just go through this exercise so you can educate your eye. But in this case, I'll just pick up maybe this light green. And what I'm going to try to do is come up with a middle color between this color and that color right there, because you can see they both have yellow in them. So I think what I'll do is I'll try this one. So in order to create this illusion, it's really important that you get an alignment correctly. And I'll just put one over the top of the other. And you can see that while it looks like this color is kind of in between this and that, it's not quite correct, because this color right here in the middle feels a little grayer, a little lighter, but not quite as yellow as this one. So let's see this one, for instance. Sometimes you just have to experiment. And you can see quite clearly that these 2 actually don't match as well. So I'm going to go to my third example, which I know is hopefully the correct example. And what you'll find is, if I carefully line this up, that this lighter grayer green appears to be becoming transparent as it crosses over this dark olive green. So that's a simple illustration of doing one with value in terms of just changing the values within a certain hue itself. So these are greens. So when you do this in your thumbnails, maybe try a couple of value shifts in terms of transparency, but then up the ante quite a bit. And you can see what I have here are essentially complements. There's sort of a crimson, sort of purple, and then also this green. And what I'm going to be trying to do is, between these 2 greens, I'm going to try to find a color that's in between the green itself and also this like sort of purple or fuchsia kind of color. So I'm going to pick up this green right here, and I'm going to assume that this is my middle, because it feels to me like there's a kind of a combination of this color with the green and also the fuchsia. And you can see the red clearly in here, but this green also has a little bit of yellow, and it also has blue, which would also be involved with this color scheme itself. So I'm going to try these first. I'm going to cross this over, and I'm going to cross it with this one because it feels a little bit lighter in value, and this is 2, and just see if those 2 sort of match up. And there is kind of an illusion of transparency right there. But what I feel is that this middle color seems a little closer to this than to this. So I feel like this green could be the incorrect green. So maybe I'll try it with this color, see if this maybe works a little bit better. And you can see that now this color, middle color, shifts a little bit towards the green and not quite so much to this. So this tells me that these two combinations are out. So I'm going to take those out. And we're just going to try this one more time. And what I've come up with is this. And what ends up happening if you're looking at this with your eye, it's a visual perception. Your brain is actually trying to reconcile these two things. And what I find myself seeing when I look at this particular example as this edge right here approaches the sort of violet, it becomes greener on the edge. And as this middle approaches this green, it actually becomes more violet on the edge. And that tells me that I've picked a good middle color between these two hues right here. So that's just an example. Once again, I want you to put 5 of these in your thumbnails. You can use small examples, and you can see the way I've arranged some of my color aid papers. I kind of pulled them out and arranged them by hue to a certain extent and sort of scattered them out. So you can be kind of random about this. I wouldn't actually screen it too much. Just pick colors randomly, but think about the relationships between the colors and how you could kind of create transparencies. So I went ahead and played around with some transparencies myself and created a couple of compositions. And this is just a 6x7 composition, which is going to be required for your portfolio. You can mount this on a piece of white paper or even black in the case of this, which sort of makes the colors pop. But you can see I created a number of different transparencies with these different colors. So I used, once again, this sort of red, orange, and a green, almost a complement of each other. And I was trying to create these areas where it appeared as if the red square goes over the green, or in this case where the orange kind of comes across the green itself. So creating sort of this push-pull. Now, the thing about this, the illusion is really important that the edges are really tight. And when you're gluing these down, it's really easy to get rubber cement all over the place. And also because these are silk screened on top of these papers, a lot of times they scratch really easily. So just try to keep as clean as you want, as you can. You can see this one is in the process of drying. I still have to clean up a little bit of this glue. You can see some shiny right here. One of the things I like to do is take my rubber cement eraser, and when the glue is dry, you can actually just lift the rubber cement off the edge itself, and that can kind of clean it up. Under this light in my studio, I actually can see a lot more glue mess ups, and so I'll probably go back through and try to clean this up as quickly as possible. But you can also see that I was experimenting with this first color, and that's kind of how I started this composition. You can see how I was sort of playing around with those two things and creating sort of this other sort of illusion of transparency. So the first assignment that you had with color was basically to create to make one color appear as two because of the relationship of the background. And in this case, the same thing is almost occurring, except you're trying to create these color transparencies. So think about this, and as we build up towards our further color studies, will increase the sort of difficulty. So the next assignment we'll be working with is basically to make two colors on two different grounds appear as the same color. So I hope that helps you out. I'm looking forward to seeing your designs. Thanks.